Mia Alvarez was no stranger to fear. As a security consultant for high-profile clients, she had made a career out of anticipating threats and protecting others from them. But when she was hired to inspect the security features of a secluded mansion in the countryside, she never expected the danger to come from inside its walls. The house belonged to billionaire tech mogul Victor Thompson, who had spared no expense in outfitting his mansion with the latest in security technology. It was a fortress, complete with reinforced steel doors, motion sensors, and a state-of-the-art panic room hidden deep within the house. Victor had recently acquired the property and, after hearing rumors of strange occurrences, decided to take extra precautions. The house itself was an imposing structure, surrounded by dense trees that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon. It had been abandoned for years before Victor bought it, and despite the renovations, it still exuded an air of decay and neglect. As Mia drove up the winding driveway, she couldn't shake the feeling that the trees were watching her, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Victor greeted her at the door with a firm handshake and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I appreciate you coming out on such short notice," he said, his voice tinged with urgency. "There's been odd activity in the house. I want to ensure the panic room is foolproof." Mia nodded, pulling her hair back into a tight ponytail as she got to work. She had dealt with paranoid clients before, but something about Victor's demeanor felt different. He was genuinely terrified. As she made her way through the house, inspecting the various security systems, she couldn't help but notice how cold it was inside, despite the warm summer air outside. The hallways were dimly lit, and every room seemed to hold its breath. Old family portraits lined the walls, their eyes following her as she moved from room to room. Finally, Mia reached the panic room. It was hidden behind a bookshelf in the study, a feature she had seen in countless high-security homes. Victor trailed behind her, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "This is the safest place in the house," Victor explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "No one can get in once the door is sealed." Mia inspected the steel door and tested the keypad. Everything seemed to be in perfect working order. She turned to Victor, about to reassure him, when the lights flickered, casting the room into brief darkness. A chill ran down Mia's spine. When the lights came back on, Victor was gone. The door to the panic room had somehow closed, sealing her inside. "Victor," she called, her voice echoing in the small, steel-lined space. There was no answer. She tried the keypad, but it was dead. Panic gripped her as she realized she was trapped. Taking a deep breath, Mia pulled out her phone. No signal. Of course, the panic room was designed to block all wireless communication. She tried to stay calm, but the air was stifling, and the walls seemed to be closing in on her. "Think, Mia, think," she muttered to herself. She had been trained for situations like this. The panic room was supposed to be a place of safety, not a prison. But as the minutes ticked by, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. A low, almost imperceptible whisper filled the air. It was so faint that Mia thought she was imagining it at first, but then it grew louder, more insistent. The voice was unintelligible, a hissing sound that sent a jolt of fear through her body. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The only response was a soft, mocking laugh that echoed through the small space. She spun around, trying to locate the source of the sound, but the panic room was empty. The lights flickered again, and the whispering grew louder. Mia's heart pounded in her chest as she pressed her ear to the door, listening for any sound from the outside. But all she could hear was the relentless whispering, now accompanied by a faint scratching noise coming from the walls. Frantically, she examined the room for any way out, but the walls were seamless, designed to withstand any attempt at a break-in. Her only hope was the keypad, but every code she tried was met with a red error light. Then, she noticed something strange. One of the air vents in the ceiling was vibrating, as if something was trying to crawl through it. The scratching grew louder, more frantic, like nails on a chalkboard. Mia's breath came in short, panicked gasps as she backed away from the vent, her eyes locked on it. Suddenly, the vent cover burst open, and something black and writhing spilled into the room. It looked like smoke, but it moved with a sinister purpose, twisting and coiling as if it had a mind of its own. The dark mass flowed across the ceiling and down the walls, filling the room with a suffocating darkness. Mia's training kicked in. She grabbed her flashlight and shone it at the writhing mass, but the light seemed to have no effect. The whispers grew deafening, filling her mind with unintelligible words and screams. She pressed her hands to her ears, trying to block out the sound, but it was inside her head, invading her thoughts. She fell to her knees, gasping for breath. The darkness was closing in, pressing against her from all sides. In a moment of desperation, she remembered the manual override Victor had mentioned. There had to be a failsafe. With trembling hands, she felt along the base of the wall, searching for the hidden panel. Her fingers brushed against a small latch, and she pulled it open to reveal a series of switches. The instructions were written in tiny, faded letters, but she could barely make them out in the dim light. The whispers were screaming now, urging her to give in, to let go. But Mia refused. She flipped the switches in the sequence she had memorized earlier, praying it would work. For a moment, nothing happened, and she thought all hope was lost. Then, with a loud click, the door to the panic room swung open. The darkness receded instantly, sucked back into the walls as if it had never been there. Mia stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for fresh air. Victor was nowhere to be seen. The house was silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifted, but Mia could still hear the faint whispering, like a distant echo. She didn't wait to find out what had happened to Victor or the source of the sinister force in the panic room. She ran, not stopping until she was back in her car, speeding away from the house and the nightmare she had just escaped. As she drove, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an unknown number. "You escaped this time, Mia. But the house isn't done with you yet." Her blood ran cold. Whatever she had encountered in that panic room, it was far from over.